As a technical editor at BikeRadar, I'm often asked which e-bike motor is best. Giving a definitive answer is tricky, so we decided to try and see which one is top dog. To find our champion, I decided to put the 4 most common motors to the test. Of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, but they are the ones you're most likely to be deciding between. And if you want to know more about the bikes I've got today, keep a lookout for my e-mountain bike of the year video, which will feature 3 of the very best. A big thank you to Freewheel for helping us make this video happen. If you like any of the kit that I'm wearing today, check out the links in the video description. Before I go into the nitty-gritty details of each motor, if you like our videos, why not subscribe to BikeRadar if you haven't already? First up is Shimano's EP8, officially called the DU EP800. The brand claims it has 85 Nm of torque, can provide up to 500 watts of peak power, and amplifies rider input by up to 400%. There are 3 modes of assistance: Eco, Trail and Boost, and it has a walk mode where the motor can be used to help propel the bike when you're pushing it up a particularly steep hill. These modes can be adjusted and fine-tuned through Shimano's eTube Project app. Plus, the app allows you to turn your smartphone into a display screen for live ride data. But you don't only have to rely on your smartphone for data. The EP8 comes with a bar-mounted display that comes in full colour or monochromatic version. The motor is controlled by 2 buttons, allowing you to easily shift through the different modes. Shimano has 2 batteries available, a 504 Wh and a 630 Wh unit. And unlike the other motors in this test, Shimano's EP8 motor can be paired with a third-party battery. The EP8 is actually the lightest system here, weighing in at a claimed 2,600 grams. As I mentioned earlier, these are the most common motors you'll find. So which bikes feature the EP8? There's a whole host, including models from Santa Cruz, Yeti, Marin, Whyte Industries and Nukeproof. I've got the Nukeproof Megawatt here, which I'm in the process of doing a full review on, so keep an eye out for that. Next is the Performance Line CX from Bosch. In terms of power, it matches the Shimano motor with 85 Nm of torque, but only turns this into 340% of rider support. However, Bosch doesn't state the max power for the Performance Line CX. The modes of assistance available on the Bosch vary based on the control unit fitted, so let's touch on that first. Much like the Shimano, there are multiple bar-mounted units, but Bosch produces a range of displays with varying functionality. The most basic is the Purion model, which even lacks smartphone connectivity. At the other end of the scale is the Neon display, which is a touch screen. The Mondraker Level R I've got here today uses the Kiox 300 display and has smartphone connectivity. In terms of assistance, there are 4 different modes. With the more basic Purion control unit, these are Eco, Trail, EMTB and Turbo. Kiox 300 bikes have Eco, Trail Plus, EMTB and Turbo modes. Trail Plus and EMTB modes are reactive to rider input, where torque and power assistance levels are altered on the fly depending on how hard a rider is pedaling. Just like the control unit, there are different Bosch apps. The one I've been using with the Performance Line CX motor is the Bosch Flow app, which allows you to tune motor outputs as well as plan and track rides. When it comes to the battery, the Bosch motor is only compatible with Bosch batteries, but they do have a wide range, starting from a 300 Wh unit going all the way up to a huge 1,250 Wh battery. Obviously, weight isn't a high priority when it comes to e-bikes, but the Performance Line CX motor is one of our heaviest, weighing in at a claimed 2,900 grams. You'll find the Bosch motor on bikes from Trek, Whyte, Scott, and, like the bike I've got here, Mondraker. Our third motor is the Brose Drive S Mag, also known as Specialaized Turbo Full Power System 2.2 motor, which is a bit of a mouthful. You can find this motor on the most powerful e-bikes from Specialaized, as well as models from German brand Rotwild and Spanish brand BH Bikes. On the stat sheet, the Brose boasts a test-leading 90 Newton meters of torque and offers a claimed 410% assistance with a massive 565 watts of peak power. That does come with a weight penalty, however. The Drive S Mag system matches the Bosch on the scales, coming in at a 2,900 grams claimed weight, one of the heaviest of our motors in test. If the motor is fitted to an e-bike from Specialaized, the battery capacity varies compared to the standard Brose motor. The Specialized Turbo full power system has a maximum battery capacity of 700 watt hours, while the Brose version maxes out at 630. Unlike the previous two systems, the Brose display is mounted to the top tube. The top spec Specialized Mastermind TCU features an inbuilt colour LCD display with customizable data fields. On the other end of the spectrum, the less sophisticated TCU uses LED lights to show battery charge and selected mode, but both displays use the same 4-button bar-mounted controller. Specialized's Mission Control app can also be used to tune assistance levels. The app is pretty sophisticated. It allows you to record your rides and features Smart Control, where the bike's assistance is automatically tuned as you ride to ensure its battery won't run flat. Specialized bikes have 3 stock modes, which are once again Eco, Trail and Turbo. However, if the bike is fitted with that Mastermind TCU, it's possible to change assistance levels in 10% increments, rather than switching between 3 predefined modes. The final motor in our test is the SyncDrive Pro, also known as the Yamaha PWX3. It's been co-developed by Giant and Yamaha, so as you'd expect, this mostly features on Giant e-bikes, but also on some Haibike and Raymon models. In terms of torque, the SyncDrive Pro motor is our third one that produces 85 Newton meters and provides a 400% support ratio, just like the Shimano EP8. Giant doesn't quote peak power output, but does claim a continuous 250 watts. If you're riding one of the Giant branded motors, like on the Rain E+1 I've got here, it's powered by either a 625 watt hour or a 700 watt hour battery, but the Yamaha version maxes out at 600 watt hours. This system weighs in at a claimed 2,750 grams, regardless of whether you have the Giant or Yamaha version. The SyncDrive system features 5 assistant modes: Eco, Tour, Active, Sport and Power. The active mode functions similarly to Bosch's Trail Plus and EMTB modes, where more rider input increases the amount of motor assistance. Giant's Ride Control Go top tube display uses sequential LED lights to indicate remaining charge and which mode the bike is in. The redesigned Ride Control Ergo 3 controller has 3 buttons and can be installed on either the left or right hand side of the bars, and button functionality is configurable using the app. Speaking of the Giant's Ride Control app, it can also be used to plan and record rides and tune the motor's power outputs. So, if this was a game of top trumps, then the Brose would be the winner on power, torque and rider support levels alone. But I'm sure you're all keen to know how these actually performed out on the trails. To put them through their paces, I rode all 4 motors head to head on the same tracks to see just how they fare in real life scenarios. I graded them on 4 key factors. The first is, obviously, power delivery and which motor feels the most powerful. Second is how easy each motor is to control. This refers to how responsive it is and how quickly it delivers its power, and how much of that power is delivered at once. The easier it is to control this power, the less likely you are to wheel spin or loop out. My third factor is the efficiency of the motors. Just how much riding can you get from a single charge? And finally, what is it like living with each motor? Are you actually going to welcome them into your life and riding stable? Okay, first up, which is the most powerful? Bosch's Performance Line CX feels like the most powerful motor out on the trail, especially in its EMTB and turbo modes. It provides addictive, constant power and feels like it matches and augments rider pedaling inputs with total cohesion. The harder you pedal, the more the motor works. The support doesn't tail off with increases in cadence or power. You're never left feeling like you want more assistance the motor is refusing to provide. Tackling ascents is a truly pleasurable experience, where a rider can either cruise at a lower speed and put in significantly less effort, or pedal with vigour, expending more energy but getting to the top much, much quicker. In contrast, the Shimano EP8 feels like it has less power than the Bosch in its maximum boost mode. At times, it can feel like it throttles back on power, especially when you pedal harder on steeper or faster ascents. This can be a bit frustrating when you're expecting its assistance to back up the effort you're putting into the pedals. That's not to say the motor is slow or underpowered, but getting the most from it requires different riding techniques compared to the Bosch. At lower cadences, the EP8 has more power and assistance, but as a rider pedals faster or harder, it reduces that on what feels like a sliding scale. Arguably, the Brose motor is well matched to the Bosch in terms of its power, despite its headline figures being marginally higher. Each pedal stroke, especially at lower cadences, is harmonised with and augmented by the motor, where more rider input equates to a satisfying boost in assistance. Unlike the Bosch, however, its power tapers down towards the very top end in a similar way to the EP8. And at the low end, the Brose feels slightly less peppy than either of those units. Basically, it has a distinct optimum support window, where either side power can feel a bit down. The SyncDrive Pro motor sits between the Shimano and Brose offerings, with plenty of support at lower cadences, which remains constant as a rider pedals harder. Compared to the Shimano EP8, it doesn't run out of steam as quickly, but doesn't quite match the continued assistance of the Bosch system. On the trail, this makes the SyncDrive Pro feel feisty and raring to go. But this isn't always a good thing, where it can be very easy to spin the back wheel. Starting from a standstill, the SyncDrive Pro motor can feel very binary. It tends to want to take off quickly, providing full power. As I said, it's great for wheel spins if that's your thing, but controlling it on steeper or more technical climbs is tricky. Being able to feed the power in slowly is vital, and is something the SyncDrive Pro motor struggles with. Power delivery from the Brose unit is much smoother and more progressive on startup. That means putting the motor's assistance through the back wheel isn't a balancing act, and harder, more positive pedal strokes can be made without wheel spin. This gives the Brose motor a more natural feeling, where rider inputs are seamlessly matched and augmented in a rather analog fashion, rather than turned into binary on or off motor outputs. But as mentioned, it does make it feel a little down on power at very low or high cadences. Shimano's EP8 has a similar natural feeling when you're already riding, mostly because of its throttled top-end support. Setting off in turbo mode on steeper or gnarly ascents can be trickier, where the motor wants to provide a lot of assistance very quickly. If you're not careful with how hard you pedal, or if you're not ready for the assistance to start, it's possible to wheel spin, making controlling the bike more difficult. Impressively, the Bosch's power delivery is progressive, despite it feeling like the most supportive motor out on the trails. The power increase tapers up and is matched to how hard a rider pedals, regardless of mode. This makes hard starts on steep or technical sections relatively easy. Massive amounts of low cadence, easy to control grunt augments this further. The Bosch doesn't need hard pedal strokes to provide assistance, where light pushes of the pedals turn the back wheel slowly but with plenty of torque. This means it behaves in a similar way to a low-range gearbox on an off-road vehicle, improving traction and control massively. Before I get into how each motor's battery performed, it's worth saying that there are a load of factors that affect how a motor uses their battery's power, such as bike and rider weight, tyre compound and carcass thickness, trail conditions, and the weather, just to name a few. It's worth noting I tested the different motor systems on different bikes from different brands, all with varying specs, components, frame and suspension designs, and weights. While this reduces the scientific element of testing, general efficiency trends have still appeared. Shimano's EP8 appears to be the most efficient motor, where bike weights, tyre compounds and trail or weather conditions had the least effect on battery range. Although merely an indication of what's possible, an EP8 motor with a 630 watt-hour battery can deliver over 2,000 metres of climbing on a single charge in eco. Specialized Brose motor with a bigger 700 watt-hour battery, although slightly less efficient than the EP8, is still impressive. Like the Shimano at lower assistance levels, over 2,000 metres of sending is more than feasible. The Bosch's battery life was affected by multiple factors. On a Purion equipped bike with double down casing, max grip compound Maxxis tyres in eco mode, over 2,000 metres of climbing was regularly achievable, even in terrible weather conditions. However, on a Kiox 300 Smart System bike with a larger 750 watt-hour battery that was fitted with DH casing max grip tyres, a mere 1,700 metres of sending was just about attainable in eco. Although this is an unscientific comparison, it highlights how different factors alter battery life. Finally, the SyncDrive Pro motor wasn't particularly efficient compared to the other three. It was possible to crack 1,500 metres of climbing on a single charge in the lower assistance modes, despite its battery being almost identical in size to both the Shimano and Bosch bikes in this test. Clearly, its eagerness to assist at low cadences is affecting the battery's range. Day-to-day usage and life with each of the motors are similar. Care and maintenance instructions, such as avoiding submersion in water or cleaning with a pressure washer, are universally shared and are good practices to follow with any mountain bike, regardless of how it's powered. Battery removal after washing to let components dry out depends on each frame design, rather than being related to any motor system specifically, where some batteries are easier to remove than others. Care and maintenance aside, one of the most frustrating things about living with certain e-bikes is the lack of an accurate battery percentage display. 3 of the displays on the bikes here with me only show battery charge in 20% increments, rather than accurate 1% changes. This makes judging exactly how much battery life you have left trickier than an accurate percentage figure. Bosch's Kiox 300 on the Mondraker and the Specialized Mastermind TCU display show accurate battery life percentages. This feature is a great addition for bikes with smart LCD displays, such as the EP8, but maybe a future software update could include this functionality. What is the best e-bike motor? Of course, this is subjective, and what you should choose will depend on your needs as a rider. That said, for me, it's a close call between the Shimano EP8 and the Bosch Performance Line CX systems. Not only do both motors offer plenty of power and good battery life, they're also available on the largest number of bikes from different manufacturers. Although an e-bike's motor and battery are key components and seriously influence how a bike rides, its suspension design, frame geometry, and the parts fitted to it are also important considerations. You might have the most powerful, most efficient, and best feeling e-bike motor in the world, but that's useless if it's fitted to a bike that's compromised in other areas. By saying that, I'm not suggesting the Giant and Specialized bikes are bad. In fact, quite the opposite is true. I exclaimed the S-Works Turbo Levo is the best bike I'd ever ridden. If you want to know more about that, then click the link in the description. But as a consumer, if you want a Brose or Yamaha motor, you're limited to a smaller number of bikes that may or may not suit your needs, compared to a Bosch or Shimano counterpart. In a perfect world, I'd meld together the natural feeling assistance of the Brose, the battery life of the Shimano, and the outright power of the Bosch, coupled with Specialized discrete Mastermind TCU and Giant's Ride Control Ergo 3 controller buttons. Of course, none of that is possible, and as it currently stands, I would personally be looking to buy bikes fitted with Shimano's EP8. But what do you think? Which motor would you go for? Please let us know in the comments. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and why not hit that little bell icon so you know every time we post a new video.